Hello, and thanks for joining us for the Farming Today podcast with me, Kaz Graham. In this episode, how a Himalayan fungus could help. I'll do that again. Hello, and thanks for joining us for the Farming Today podcast with me, Kaz Graham. In this episode, how a Himalayan fungus could help rid our riverbanks of Himalayan balsam, and Scotland's controversial land reform bill.
It's about transparency, involving communities in decisions around the land where they live and work, and making sure they're a fundamental part of those important decisions.
We will have more on that a little later. First of all, though, farmers with historic features on their land, anything from ancient walls right through to Roman ruins, often struggle with how to maintain them. They require conservation standard work, which is expensive and requires specialist skills. Historic England's Countryside Stewardship Heritage Service advises farmers on how to get funding for this. Desmond Holmes's land near Kendal in South Cumbria has not one but two such historic features, both in need of some tender, loving care. And he's been getting guidance from this Historic England programme, as I found out on a blustery autumn day.
The bridge is a cart bridge. It was built 1811, 1812, I would guess. And the tenant of the land at the time was a man called John Inman. We call it Inman's Bridge.
A lot of the bridges are a bit like this along here. They've been replaced, with concrete structures, things like that?
One below is girders, yes. The one above has completely collapsed.
And just in the middle of the bridge, there's a couple of big stones that come right down. They're almost underwater at the moment, and that's the keystone.
Yes.
It shouldn't look like that, should it?
It should not, no. The bridge has slipped. It's not a complete curve now. If that keystone drops out, the bridge will collapse.
Would you know where to start in restoring this bridge?
I personally wouldn't like to start on it, no.
Well, that is where Dr. Natalie Gates comes in. Natalie Gates leads the Countryside Stewardship Heritage Service at Historic England. You've been able to help out with advice about how to restore this bridge and lots of other things a bit like it.
Yeah, the team are here to help farmers with historic structures, monuments, things like this bridge, walls, you name it, scheduled monuments that people have in the middle of a field. And what the team can do is actually advise what the best way is to approach it. So the farmers can then apply for the Defra Countryside Stewardship funding, which will help them get the money to repair things, but in the way that's appropriate.
And so how have you worked with Desmond here?
We've been working on what is a feasibility study at the moment for both the lovely bridge here and his listed lime kiln further up the road. That will tell Desmond exactly what he needs and, critically, how much it will cost. He can then make an application for another grant to mend both the bridge and the lime kiln. People need help to apply for these grants because heritage is a specialist area. We can bring that advice and we can bring it right at grassroots to help individual farmers.
And Desmond, you have another historic feature on this farm.
Yes, we're going to have a look at it next. Right, so we're on the top of the lime kiln now.
Lots of vegetation. We're just sort of making our way through here. It feels like we're actually almost on top of a building, and in front of us there's this great hole. It's about 12 foot wide. The walls are all covered in this beautiful green moss. What happened here, Desmond?
Alternative layers of limestone and coal, in this case coke, about 2 foot thick I think. Then the thing was fired from below, burnt, and then the lime and loaded up into carts and taken to customers.
And what was the lime used for?
It was used for improving the land, building, plaster, mortar and whitewashing.
Natalie, why is it so important to preserve things like this? Some people would be saying it's kind of derelict anyway.
It's about keeping those fundamental parts of the landscape so people can read and understand the past. Nationally, this is important remnants of that agricultural history. We are looking across to the most beautifully stunning view. We are getting lashed with rain, and yet the sunlight is dappling down across. It is so beautiful.
And there's a rainbow, and the Lake District Fells are in the background.
And it's really important that people can actually read this landscape. This is a working landscape. It should remain a working landscape.
And is it right that landowners and farmers are given public money to keep this part of what was this living landscape?
Absolutely, yes. As we've seen at the bridge, some of that is a real working landscape. It is about keeping the heritage in use. The public funding is to help that heritage as well. It is in the public domain. This is something that needs to be maintained both for people to see, but also to keep safe and keep using the bridleways and have the access.
That's Dr. Natalie Gates from Historic England. Himalayan balsam, which can be abundant on riverbanks with its masses of pink flowers and those seed pods that pop explosively, has just about died off for the winter. As the name suggests, it's not a native species and in fact is one of the most troublesome invasive non-native plants in our countryside. For our week looking into invasive species, Richard Baines has this report on how a fungus could hold the key to controlling it.
It came to our notice about 5 or 6 years ago, and since then it has just overtaken us.
Julie Hutchison chairs the local community council here in my home village of Blainfield in Stirlingshire. This small wood along the Blaine Water is infested with Himalayan balsam.
It is killing off a lot of the ground plants that are getting smothered. When it dies off and it's already killed what's on the ground, then you're going to get a movement of soil. If you get a lot of rain, the soil is going to wash. I mean, it's just a case of getting it up, and the roots come out really easily.
Julie and other locals made huge efforts to rid the area of the balsam.
We started off behind the kids' play park in Strathblane. I mean, we managed to clear a fair amount, but when it's popping, it's just so easy to seed.
The sheer amount of work involved meant hand pulling was not sustainable.
The rust fungus has a two-pronged attack. It infects the just germinating seedlings in the spring, and these seedlings are then more susceptible to secondary infection by the pathogens. 80% of these seedlings can die as a result of the rust.
Kate Pollard is a plant pathologist with CABI, the International Biosciences non-profit. The invasive strength of the balsam has led CABI to spend almost 20 years developing the use of rust fungus collected in the plant's native range to tackle the invader.
The rust then goes on to infect mature plants, forming brown pustules on the lower leaf surface, and these help draw away nutrients from the plant, so it helps reduce the production of seeds.
But are rust funguses safe?
For Himalayan balsam, we tested 74 different plant species, and this includes those which grow in the same environment as Himalayan balsam, and also a number of horticulturally and agriculturally important crop species. Our research found that the rust is highly host specific and only will complete its life cycle on Himalayan balsam itself. So it didn't cause damage to these other species that we tested.
Since 2014, the funguses have been distributed at around 100 sites across the UK.
In this area that I'm in, it's very, very dense.
Emily Wiles is from the Tweed Forum Conservation Organisation. The Tweed catchment on the Scottish-English border is infested with balsam, and rust was first released here 9 years ago.
We're having mixed results. So we're learning every single year about different issues that are coming up, microclimate issues at different sites. We actually get different subspecies and genetically different plants from different areas of the Himalayas. So we have to genetically test our plants at each site to match it with a rust species. We've got one particular site where we have released the rust fungus, and in year 1 we saw a reduction of Himalayan balsam. In year 2, we saw balsam plants nearly non-existent.
Another site in Northumberland is also encouraging.
It seems like it's surviving the winter and then going on to infect the adult plants in the summertime and then spread on to other adult plants. And so that is a self-sustaining population of rust, which is kind of what we wanted.
That report from Richard Baines. The Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs has announced that an avian influenza prevention zone will come into effect tomorrow in the north, the east and central parts of England. Poultry keepers with flocks of more than 50 birds will be required to keep their birds housed. The chief vet says prompt action is needed to prevent further spread of the disease. Now, farmers and landowners in Scotland are keenly watching events at the Holyrood Parliament in Edinburgh this week. The Land Reform Bill has reached its final stages before MSPs get to vote on what's been described as landmark legislation. The bill, if passed, could, for the first time, allow the government to intervene in private land sales and require large estates to be broken up. The government says it wants to address the high concentration of land ownership in the hands of relatively few people in Scotland. But their proposals are proving controversial with landowners and some opposition politicians. Phil Sim is a political correspondent for BBC Scotland, and he told me what's behind this legislation.
It feels like there's a big land reform bill just about every term of the Scottish Parliament, or at least when looking at crofting, there are sort of perennial issues here. But there is still a big issue with the highly concentrated ownership of land, particularly around the Highlands, around the south of Scotland, the sort of big rural areas of Scotland. They reckon there's about 400 people own 50% of Scotland's land, and the government say that just doesn't feel right. So they're looking at these reforms which go kind of to really unprecedented places in terms of trying to change how land is owned, how it's managed. Here is the Scottish Government's Rural Affairs Secretary, Mary Goujon, explaining a little more about it.
It's about transparency, involving communities in decisions around the land where they live and work, and making sure they're a fundamental part of those important decisions. It's about diversifying land ownership. Scottish ministers determining whether we can lot land when large estates go up for sale, which we think is a really significant and important power. And also making sure that our tenant farmers are fairly compensated, that we have the ability to look after our small landholders and see more small landholders in Scotland too.
So what exactly will the bill do, Phil?
So it's chiefly focused on large landholdings, so estates of over 1,000 hectares. They will have to publish a land management plan so that people have a better idea what's going on the land. And there would also be more opportunities for communities to lease land on these estates. And indeed, when they come to be sold, the government could actually step in if there's a possibility that you're just going to see like a quick private sale, because you have heard complaints before from communities that they haven't had the opportunity. They kind of find out their landlord has changed after the fact of a private sale. So there could be more time and opportunity for community groups to potentially organise and bid to take control of land. There's also the possibility of large plots of land being broken up and sold in smaller lots, if that could make the local community more sustainable, and also changes to small land holdings, to agricultural holdings, how those are managed. It is a very big bill. I mean, it covers an awful lot of ground, if you'll excuse the pun.
It sounds fairly controversial as well. What has the response been from landowners?
Yeah, I mean, not great overall. So Scottish Land and Estates is the body which represents a lot of landholders. They say there are major flaws in this legislation. They say that breaking up estates would represent a serious and unworkable interference in the land market. They say the land management plans that are turning into a bureaucratic nightmare. The National Farmers Union have also weighed in. They say there's a risk of damaging rural businesses and disrupting the land market. They're worried about red tape.
What about in Parliament? Is there going to be support for the proposals?
We are expecting a lot of debate at the proposals. So they were scheduled to sit until 10 o'clock last night. They're sitting until 10 o'clock again tonight, debating these amendments, literally hundreds of amendments to the bill. We've already seen it change from being landholdings of over 3,000 hectares to ones of over 1,000. But Labour and the Greens have been pushing for it to go to 500 hectares, so basically smaller parcels of land being caught up by this. You have people who say it goes too far, and you've got people who say it doesn't go far enough. We can hear a wee clip now from the Conservative MSP Tim Eagle and the Green member Ariane Burgess.
I mean, this fundamentally is about this sort of thought process that the government have, that anybody that owns more than 1,000 hectares is bad for the rural economy, without actually understanding that actually they're a vital part of it. So actually they support smaller holdings.
If you think about it, right now there are landowners that are buying up parcels of land, so it's kind of smothering communities. They've got the land, they've got the hotel, they've got the housing, they've got the local shop. And communities feel that they have less and less say, less and less power around what is happening right in their communities.
So as you hear, quite sort of sharply divergent views. But I mean, the SNP do need another party to back their proposals. They're a minority government in the Scottish Parliament. I think they probably will get that backing in. I think there are enough parties which are supportive enough of the big picture. But I wonder if ultimately the government might need to give some ground on some specific amendments in order to get this through Parliament.
Phil Sim from BBC Scotland. And that's all from us for today. I'm Kaz Graham. The producer is Rebecca Rooney, and Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.